to that point, Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer said that he did not receive assurances that we wouldn't go into other countries. President Trump has made comments like Cuba's ready to fall. He said that the United States needs Greenland from a national security situation. We need it from the standpoint of national security. Do you think that this raid in Venezuela is a slippery slope here? The United States is going to raid other countries, A, and B, domestically, is there really an appetite for that?
Well, it's hard for me to guess about the appetite of the people of America, but when you're tearing apart the Constitution, I suspect that it is not going to sit well and shouldn't sit well with what people expect under these circumstances. And does it set a horrible precedent? Yes, it obviously sets a horrible precedent because he's not only talked about these particular issues, these new invasions, he's promised to go back into Venezuela. He's also talked about taking umbrage with the comments from the president of Colombia, and that he's not the least bit deterred from taking off into Colombia as well. In addition to that, you've had him discuss Greenland before and talk about, I think his quote was, "I'll do what I have to get a hold of Greenland." In addition to that, they've designated a number, his administration that is, of other countries, 9 other countries that they believe that they want to keep a focus on. They've designated as the countries that are illicit drug producing countries, which is what they started with Venezuela as well. So this is, I think, a part of a plan and a view of the world that reveals a conspiracy of sorts that has just unbelievably horrific impacts, not only on the United States, but on the entire planet.
I mean, what's the likelihood of a potential war, do you think? Because as of now, Secretary of State Marco Rubio said that we're not in a war with Venezuela, but the United States also did launch a military operation, extracted the sitting leader, brought him to our country, and then said we're not at war, and then said that that was because of drugs. What's the likelihood that we could eventually be going to war?
Well, I think, frankly, with all due respect to the Secretary of State, he's speaking out of both sides of his mouth, because on the one side he's saying there's no war between the countries. What he authorized, what the president authorized, and what happened in Venezuela was an act of war. That is clear and plain on its face. In addition to that, his representation, his attempted representation to reflect this as a law enforcement operation is simply unbelievable when you think about it. For instance, there were 150 aircraft that were involved in this particular attack, launched from 20 bases. In addition to that, those aircraft, there are 15,000 troops and sailors and Marines sitting in the Caribbean waiting for any kind of additional difficulty. They fired off air-to-surface missiles, cruise missiles. The fighter jets were involved, the bombers, drones. So this is a law enforcement operation? I mean, how foolish does he think we are? So at the end of the day, when he says we're not at war, in fact, they committed an act of war. And as a consequence, we have to face the consequences.
And it does seem like there seems to be mixed messaging when it comes to the involvement of U.S. forces, because after President Trump announced that this raid was complete, he said, we're not afraid of boots on the ground. But then a few days later this week, Speaker Mike Johnson said this is not a regime change. This is a demand for a change of behavior by a regime. He also added this: we don't expect troops on the ground. We don't expect direct involvement in any other way beyond just coercing the new interim government to get that going. I mean, if the plan is, according to President Trump, the United States is temporarily running Venezuela, how do you do that without troops on the ground?
Well, that's a very good question. And frankly, he hasn't indicated any reticence about doing that. So he's talking about, in fact, becoming engaged in another act of war. And as a consequence of that, the entire order of nations and states and all of the efforts that have been made to create processes and procedures for not only the United States, but the entire world to bring about some sense of order and an ability to rely upon a code, a moral code of behavior and to have trust in one another is virtually out the window. At the end of the day, there's ample evidence here, Brittany, in my view, that this is a part of a grotesquely large plan that the president has that dates back to when Puerto Rico, for instance, was involved with all of the hurricanes in 2017. And at that moment in time, he wanted to barter and see if we could get out of our obligations to a territory of the United States where there are 3 million American citizens that live, and trade them away for Greenland. So, I mean, this is a part of an epic effort to try and conquest all of these different places and to bring them into an order of behavior that he thinks is appropriate and that looks out for the best interest of the United States. And along the way, to trade money or blood for money with the sequestration of the assets of Venezuela and any other nations along the way.